all of us at some point in the next few minutes are going to realize that these people are all around us. We are talking about emotional vampires today. Dr. Shaheem is back for another session of More Than Mind. Do they have like fangs? Are they like looking for blood and
Is it
ready to go?
Halloween? Oh my goodness. So yeah, emotional vampires exist all year, unfortunately, Shelly June, not just during Halloween. And we have all experienced these type of people at some point in our lives. They fall under the umbrella of individuals who are toxic. But let me correct myself. I don't like to call them toxic people. They are people who demonstrate and exhibit toxic behaviors.
Mm.
And there's a difference there because, you know, when you tell someone you're toxic, that it's a label on them, which indicates that they're not able to change, but they are able to change and they are able to develop and be much better. But so being an emotional vampire is a type of a toxic behavior. Okay. And an emotional vampire is said to feed off of the life or energy force of other living creatures like us. And the term can also be used to describe a person who gets increased energy around other people, but leaves those other people exhausted or drained of
Oh,
energy. Okay. And
okay.
oftentimes, you know, when it comes to, if we think about this term, emotional vampires, we think of Hollywood movies or Netflix series of uh, creatures in dark alleys. Oh, no, no, no. These people could be at your Sunday lunch.
Oh,
They can be in your Friday night gatherings. They could be family members that we've interacted with
yes.
a lifetime. And again, there's a lot of confusion, guilt around this because we think, A, why do I feel like I'm walking on eggshells every time I'm around this person? And B, why do I feel so incredibly drained every time I leave their presence? And is this someone who gradually over time, I think twice about making plans with? I might call you up, Shali, and I say, oh my God, is so and so coming on Friday night as well? And you're like, yeah, you know, she is. And I think, oh, I don't know if I want to be there. And it starts feeling as if I can't put my finger on it. Most people aren't able, they don't know the term emotional vampire or toxic behaviors, but they know that it doesn't make them feel good, right? It feels wrong and it feels bad. So toxic people or emotional vampires want to be around you, not to enjoy you necessarily, but to try and feed off of you, take energy out of you, and perhaps to try and change you. You become the projection of everything they hate about themselves. And instead of turning inwards to kind of work on their weaknesses or on their limitations, what they do is they irrationally lash outwards at their various targets. And if they can't exert their influence and their impact on you, if you
Okay.
start withdrawing from them, they will find your family and friends or
Oh,
other people that you know in your network to try and tell them who you are because they think they know you best and that they know, you know, it's, as soon as you try and escape their clutches, they'll widen their influence to friends and family members. They'll go to your best friend and say, you know what? You know what Shali told me about you last year? I think that
oh
you
my
should know.
God. I know these people. I know these people. Oh,
It's painful, right?
they're
It's
everywhere, Dr. Shaheem.
I know, unfortunately. And you know what?
What?
Look, we have to become emotional vampire. We have to psychologically slay these people, or else we enable their behaviors. Most of the time, I would say a significant percentage of people don't confront them, they don't prevent them, they don't stand up to them. And I'm talking about the toxic father, the toxic mother, siblings, husband, wife, best friends, cousins, people in social circles, that that we in our head, when you're not an emotional vampire, when you don't have toxicity within you, when someone says something hurtful and offensive, in your head, you do the math and you say to yourself, is it worth it right now for me to publicly humiliate this individual or
Mhm.
to create some drama in front of everybody else? No, let me just put my head down, swallow this, and move on. And that's exactly what they want. That's
They want that?
exactly what they, oh, yes, they'll say something that is big enough but yet but not big enough for you to confront it, because as soon as you confront it, they'll turn around and say, oh, Shirley, you're so sensitive, aren't you? Are you having a bad day? What's the matter, dear? I didn't mean anything.
Yeah.
Why is it, well, gosh, you're having a bad day, aren't you? And that's a type of gaslighting, right? When people are so manipulative that instead of validating what you're feeling or apologizing for what I just said that has clearly hurt you, I turn it around and I make it more your fault. How dare you raise it in front of everybody, or even saying things like, do you think this is the right place or the right audience to have this conversation? So basically it becomes your fault.
How do you identify the vampires that we see in the movies? Like they don't have fangs, and then all of a sudden they like come out and they're lurking among the
Yeah,
people looking for their prey. But I mean, really, that's
yeah,
what it is, right?
yeah,
Those
yeah, yeah,
these people are doing the same thing. Is it easy to identify them, or is that gut feeling
yeah.
your red flag to say
Well,
something doesn't feel right, and that's how you should know you're being targeted and somebody wants to feed off of you?
right, right. Unfortunately, within this scenario, as you mentioned, there are no tangible or visible um, qualities or characteristics that we can point to say that this person is that way. But there are signs that a person is an emotional vampire. Okay.
Okay.
And behaviors, so the kinds of practices that they engage in or the behaviors that they engage in, such as what these people make you second guess yourself.
Uh-oh.
They're into whatever you do or say. When you share it with them, they make you think, gosh, did I do the right thing? Did I say the right thing? To the point where you might even start questioning your sanity. That, am I okay? Is it me? Or, what's going on? They make us question, and they always blame you for everything. It's always your fault. So, for example, if you were walking and someone's leg was sticking out and you tripped on their leg, Shirley, why don't you look where you're going? They don't check to see if you're okay. There's immediate blame about what happened. They virtually have no idea how to apologize, and they will rarely ever apologize. They don't
Wow.
express any kind of empathy. They make up all kinds of stories to convince people that they're right. So whatever point they're trying to make to
Okay.
you,
Uh-huh.
they'll come up with a story. They'll fabricate stories to say that, look, even this person of authority or this person says, we've all heard this before, Shali, because I care about you, and that you're an important person to me, a special person to me, I just want to let you know that there are a few of us that think that you are blah, dot dot dot. People are saying, who are these people?
Oh, good one.
People are saying, who are these?
Who
I
are
want to
these
know
people?
who are these people. And guess what? But if they're not here sitting at this table having this discussion with us, that data is null and void. No, thank you very much. You cannot be the spokesperson of a population, random population sample of other people. Doesn't work. It's not gonna. You're one person and one opinion, my friend. Speak for yourself, and then we can talk about whether I can validate that
Oh, that
information
was
or
good.
not.
I like that one.
Right? Who are these? Who's they? This abstract committee of individuals making decisions about my life.
Uh, oh
And why are
man,
they so bored?
it's so
don't they have
funny because it's so true.
don't they have anything better to do, right?
No, clearly
um,
not.
Clearly not, right? And so these people bring out the worst in you. When
Okay.
you find yourself behaving or acting in a way that you don't even recognize, you think to yourself, boy, who was that? I don't like myself when I'm around these people. They're not very good at listening. They usually disapprove of people in your life and decisions in your life. So they'll always tell you, don't hang out with this person. They don't really like you. Or this person, when you're sitting in a group, they'll point out the flaws of everybody else. And the reason they want to do that is that because they want you as the life force to themselves. So they want to clear the path of other individuals
Oh,
who may help you understand that there's an emotional vampire in the room. And so their best strategy is to kind of clear the way, so that they have you all to themselves and that they don't need to
wow.
share
That's so
that.
manipulative.
It is. It very much is. Absolutely. And then as soon as you do what they want, because these people often think that they know what's best for you, the goalpost moves, it shifts, it changes.
Okay.
So you can never make them really, you can never fully satisfy them or please them. There's always, because they breed off of criticism. They keep people hungry. Especially emotional vampires are very much attracted to people who have a deep desire to seek approval, because
Okay.
if you don't have a deep desire to seek approval, it's highly unlikely that you would waste any time with these types of
Mm. Mhm.
toxic, people,
Crazy.
emotional vampires, maybe for a short amount of time. But generally the individuals, unfortunately, that fall prey or become a long-term victim to these people is probably because of some dysfunctional attachment styles that they have had in the past. And I think this is an important topic for us to explore in relationships in a later segment, Shali, of the types of attachment styles that we had with our parents and how that plays out in our relationships later on in life. And so there are these people who seek approval. And when you are an approval seeker, you very much gravitate towards a person who's constantly moving the goalpost, because that perpetuates your need to constantly try and please them. But it's a never-ending pursuit because they're never fully satisfied.
I could see that it might be easier to manage this if these people are in the friendship world, your professional world.
Mm,
But many times these vampires, emotional vampires, are in our families. I mean, I get
yeah.
messages from people asking you to help explore those very toxic or hurtful or negative relationships that are in the
Mm,
immediate circle, because it's very hard when someone is your mother, your
yeah.
father, your sibling, your cousin, uncle, aunt, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
To, and which this is another great podcast is session, is how you distance yourself from people who are even
Mm,
family members. What if you have somebody in your family, a
yeah.
spouse, a sibling, a parent, who are one of these people?
Yeah. Shali, you know what? This touches on two very important points here. The first one is our cultural backgrounds. Okay. So, from a cultural perspective, traditions and cultures have been created by us, and they sometimes enslave us and they keep us captive, and they keep us sort of from progressing and developing. What do I mean by that? What I mean by this is that if the emotional vampire is an older uncle or a respectable family member, then from a cultural perspective, we have been taught not to question people who are older. We have been taught not to second guess family members who are of a particular age or status, right? And unfortunately, this has created a lot of issues, and people have suffered immensely as a result of having to silence themselves because it has been their mom or it has been their dad or an uncle. Now, let me say this. Without knowing the specifics of every case, it would be very difficult for me to comment on what the guidelines should be or what the steps should be for people to confront toxicity or these types of psychological emotional vampires, right? But
Okay.
by and large, generally speaking, what I would like to say is, regardless of who it is, you know, they do not have the right to be manipulative and to engage in harmful, hurtful, long lasting dysfunctional behavior that is likely to disturb our mental health and our well being. Okay. So if you are putting your mental health and your well being first, then the first step is to recognize and to identify that these certain behaviors, these practices, these actions and words are toxic. And and this is not good for me. Now, if I can't, for cultural reasons or for whatever reasons, if I can't confront that person or have that conversation with them, then I need to establish very clear boundaries and to separate myself from this person, because otherwise what's going to happen is I'm going to incur long-term psychological damage by being in their presence. Now, what if it's your partner? I've gotten lots of messages as well. What if it's my wife or what if it's my husband?
Yeah.
So what? Of course you should confront it. Of course you should talk about it. You remember, Shali, what you permit will persist.
Oh,
Whatever you permit will persist, especially in our private lives. Especially in
yeah.
our private lives.
Yeah.
So if you're permitting something to continue, you're enabling that behavior.
Mhm.
And then not only will that continue for you, that person may behave the same way with their children, with your children. And I have parents sometimes who have sent me messages. I've spoken to parents whose children display these kinds of behaviors. And my advice to them is loving your child and helping them become better and do better do not have to be polar opposites. They can be juxtaposed next to each other. They can live comfortably side by side each other. So parents would say, "But I love my child, and I don't want to I don't want to hurt them, or I don't want to, bring these behaviors to their attention all the times." But guess what?
Mm.
What is the result of these behaviors? They're not able to sustain relationships and friendships. They're
Yeah.
having all kinds of problems in society. And my answer to the parents is, would you rather be the one to deliver this difficult line of discipline or have these difficult conversations? Or would you prefer a lover break their heart and have this conversation with them at the age of 21, 20, 22, 25, 30 to say, I can't live with you because of your toxic ways? Would you like your kids in the future, or your friends or your family members, to be fired from a job because nobody can work with them? Would you like them to be marginalized and isolated from their friends' network because no one brought these dysfunctional behaviors to their attention? I think we have a duty to not tolerate such behavior and not to constantly seek their approval, and to gradually establish boundaries. You see what we can do, Shali, at the beginning, if you have access to them and if you're able to have that conversation with them, I would say that would be the best line of the
Okay.
most effective, the healthiest way to go forward. And your emotional vampires are on a continuum, right? So
Right.
there's different degrees of sucking our energy and our sanity. And the people who are not so far off on the continuum might be receptive to your feedback, and they may take that feedback on board and change their ways. Once you tell them, do you know that what you say and do hurts people? It hurts me. I go home and I cry. I go home and I cry myself to sleep at the end of the evening based on what you say. Do you know that you have that impact on people? And when you bring it to their attention, and I have many examples of this, that they really sit back and they think, my goodness, no, that wasn't my intention. I never wanted it to be that way. And I'm going to start being a little bit more empathetic and mindful of what I say and what I do to people who are close to me. A few weeks ago, I posted some uh, descriptions and some information about toxic individuals. And I got a number of messages, Shelley, from people who said, Dr. Shaheem, what if I'm the toxic one?
Yes.
I'm reading this and now I'm thinking, this is what I'm doing to my family and friends, which I found I was so proud of them. I mean, I thought, what courage it must
Yeah.
take to read this stuff and say, gosh, I see aspects of some of these points in myself. And so then they asked for, what are some signs that I could be this emotional vampire? And I created a list. Should I read that list
Yes, yes, yes. Give it
off
so that we
for
can,
you?
if
Okay.
people are watching this right now and they're wondering, oh, could this be me? Because from what I'm understanding, you could be emotional vampire, not really be a bad person. If you have the
Yeah.
ability that somebody turns around to you and says, do you realize what
Mm,
you do and you make me cry? And that
yeah.
person can say, oh, that wasn't my intention. That these
Yeah.
aren't necessarily really bad people. These are just
No.
people that are needing this for whatever reason that, you were
Yeah.
just talking about right now, that they engage in this type of behavior with others.
Right. Or they have a void to fill, or they
Yes.
have major insecurities and they want you to themselves because they don't know how to functionally nurture relationships
Right.
in a healthy way. So they kind of smother you in that way, right? And so what you were saying about, yes, and one of the times in which this conversation was incredibly effective was when this client of mine was canceling plans. The sort of the relationship had diminished,
Okay.
and it had eroded to the point where she didn't want to see this person anymore. And so every time he tried to make plans with her, she would cancel the plans at the last minute because she thought, I just don't want to put myself in that situation. So my advice was, why don't you have the conversation rather than not tell them why you're canceling plans? And this makes this individual even more angry as it goes along. They get angry and angrier as time goes on. And so she did have the conversation. She said, you know what, let's go for coffee. And I want to tell you why I've canceled our last couple of meetings. And she
Wow.
sat down and she said, because I look forward to meeting you. There's so much about you that's charming and interesting and gracious and large and you're so charismatic in so many ways, but then you have some thorns.
Oh,
As soon as I get too close, I feel like a beautiful flower that has thorns that I get cut by you. Bits of shattered glass, I feel like cut at my soul. And then I regret being in your presence. And
mm,
then she offered him a few examples, really specific examples of things he said or things he did to make her feel that way. And that was the turning point for him. He even sent me a thank you card um, for helping her, you know, achieve that sort of,
wow.
or to be able to be confident enough to have that
And
conversation
what a
for him.
feeling he must have had too. Like a
Yeah.
moment to be free. Dr. Shaheem, there is
Yeah.
nothing, in my opinion, that feels so powerful and so freeing than this ability to be in a place to love others and not feel like you're at war while you're
Yeah.
on this earth with
Yeah.
others. It
Yeah.
feels
Yeah.
so good to be able to do that. And when I see
Yeah.
people and all these challenges of the emotional vampires and the
Yeah.
shaming that we've talked about and all these different topics we talk about, the battle that they go through, it doesn't feel good. It feels so
No.
good to be like, what's up, world? I'm here to love.
Exactly. And it doesn't feel good, and it doesn't do good.
Yeah.
It's not good for anybody. It's not good.
Anybody.
This is the anger, the toxicity that we pour into our system creates, triggers all sorts of stress hormones, cortisol, and it does damage. It wreaks havoc on our system. So
Yeah.
nobody benefits from this, right? So some of the signs that a person is an emotional vampire, or displays this kind of toxicity, is that these people create drama and destruction rather than seek calm and compassion. Everywhere they go, there's a tornado of destruction around them. They're not good listeners. They judge and criticize. They're nice to people who benefits them.
Mm.
Okay, so for example, one of the biggest ways that I get to know people is I watch them, and I look at the way they interact with waiters, with security guards, people who stand at doors, hold the doors open, and it's very telling to
Yes.
see if what kind of person are you, and the way that you talk to and treat people. I mean, you don't get any points for being polite to someone who
Yep.
is superior, or more powerful than you, right? So, and they're jealous. So these people are very jealous of anybody around you. They focus more on controlling you rather than caring for you.
Mm.
And it can be very draining. So, and for other people who are wondering, am I exposed to this emotional um, vampire? Ask yourself, do they refuse to take accountability? Do you feel like you're bullied or you're guilt tripped all the time into doing things? Do they use passive aggression to create different types of conflict and chaos so that they're able to exert their influence onto you? Do you demonstrate any physical symptoms of stress when you spend time again around them? And do you find yourself wanting to cancel plans in the future because you think, yeah, they're a family member and they're nice, but there's just something about them that doesn't feel right? Okay, please choose you first. Your mental health should come first. Remember, Shali, you and I talked about emotional allergies in one of our live sessions. And just because you may be allergic to some of their ways doesn't mean everybody else might feel that way. But
Hmm.
that doesn't mean you should not acknowledge your feelings of discomfort when it comes to the way somebody else is making you feel. And listen to those feelings, be true to them, try and talk to these individuals and bring to their attention. Some people may not be conscientious of some of their actions and behaviors. Bring it to their attention. And if it works, great. If not, you are in charge of limiting your time around them, making sure that you have clear boundaries, and protecting yourself first.
See, that's the garlic you need for the vampires. You don't need the garlic to hold it
There
up
you
and then
go.
the holy water on that. You need those
Yeah.
things and the boundaries, and uh,
Yeah.
and you'll be clear of them. Dr. Shaheem, thank you so much for your time. I have a lot of work to do in this emotional vampire. This was a lot because they're all around me.
Gosh, I know. And it's tough. It's tough. But as soon as you start identifying them, Shali, you will have much less tolerance in
Ugh,
terms of, and you will definitely um, limit your exposure. You will not expose yourself to them as often as before.
I love it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. This was a great one.
My pleasure. You're very, very welcome. See you soon.